just wherever you are doing. So thank you very much to Shirley Dempsey, who came on last week to talk about how we can manage our budgets and in a kind of holistic way and a mindful way, and how mental health is affected by money. She has a company called Balance by Shirley, and you should go back and listen to that if you haven't done so, if you think it will help. Thanks for all your support during the week, as always, all the likes and all the follows and all that stuff. It's great. I'll introduce this week's guest and not get it completely wrong. She is a senior research fellow for psychology at the Slovak Academy of the Sciences, and her name is Elas Drazkiewicz. I overthought it. You say your second name now.
Elas Drazkiewicz, and it's Institute for Sociology, but I am anthropologist.
Yeah. And that's going to be one of my questions, actually, because the difference between sociology and anthropology, and we'll kind of get into that. But thank you very much for. I was thinking about your name for about a week now, and I overthought it, and then when it came to it, I messed it up. But thank you very much for filling that in. Listen, we always start at the beginning, about a short history of your upbringing. You're on mute.
Sorry.
You're
I was born and raised in Warsaw, Poland, and I was born in the 1980. So it was a very interesting time growing up. I write about it a little bit. I start my book, which is about foreign aid and humanitarianism. And I write there by starting with a personal story of what does it mean to be at the receiving aid end of the humanitarian assistance. What does it mean to grow up in a country which was considered very poor? But paradoxically, as I later grew up and moved to the West, I lived in Ireland, and I recently became Irish citizen, which is super fun for me and a great privilege. But anyway, I realized that what has been considered poverty was actually a lot of opportunities and privilege. So I could access all good things like theater and sports and, just be a happy kid trying to find out who I am.
Brilliant.
Simple things.
Yeah. And when did you first become aware of mental health?
That's a good question. I think growing up, seeing mental illness around me, which obviously in the 80s was a taboo, and that's something that you do not really discuss, but then you realize that quite a few people around you struggle. So that was definitely something that was, in my close to me. And I think also in a country where people struggle with history, with constant social transition, change, whatever you call it, there was a lot of mental issues as well. So everyone, as you start talking about it with your friends, you realize that everybody goes through something. And the structural reality of your society impacts families and how people live.
Absolutely, yeah, no, absolutely. And so anthropology, then, could you tell us what anthropology is?
So in anthropology, we try to understand humans and what brings them together, but also what makes them different. So how is it that we are all humans, but we are so diverse and we have all those different cultures and different ways of living and different structures, and we differently organize our lives. So in anthropology, we try to understand what makes us humans and also what makes us similar and different.
Do you think that, like, your upbringing in Poland was something that gave you this interest in anthropology to begin with?
I like to call myself selfish anthropologist, which means I address questions that I am very interested in, and I think that in some way affect me. So when I was interested in studying foreign aid, it was because of me recognizing that I was subjected to some form of humanitarianism, and I found this gift, a charitable gift, to be quite humiliating. I had a lot of connections with, I have family in the UK who were refugees during the war, the Second World War, and I knew how unbalanced relation between the West and the East was, and how it impacted my family and my society. So I wanted to address those questions and understand why people give, and why there is this hierarchy of donors, and why there are aid recipients and aid donors, and why there are this, it seems like a positive thing to support others, but also it creates unbalance and lack of, like, it's supposed to address lack of balance, but at the same time it perpetuates this inequality in a way. So I was interested in it, but it came from my own experience of someone who grew up during, crisis in Poland, but also as someone, I went in the 1980s, 90s, or early 2000. Yeah, it must have been early 2000s, to Kosovo.
Okay.
To work there, volunteer. I was super young, and I could speak some Croat, Serbian, and I thought that I could be helpful as someone with also anthropological education. And I volunteered at the summer camps for the victims for the children in Kosovo. And I left the place thinking, I'm not needed there. Those people are completely capable of, organizing camps for themselves. They don't need a girl from Warsaw to do that for them. But then I realized that for other people who I worked with, this experience was formative and ended up in a very different conclusion. They were hooked and they really wanted to help others. And many of them chose this. It was a important moment, formative moment for them, which helped them to decide their careers. They wanted to work in the aid industry. And I wanted to understand, how is it that we went through the same experience, but we ended up with a different conclusion? I wanted out, they wanted in, and they felt that it's extremely important work, and they were very genuine about it and passionate about it. And I had a different view. But I wanted to understand them. So for me, anthropology is always an opportunity to understand others and their perspective. I hope without judgment.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I read some of your work, and I heard you on a podcast as well, and the idea of looking at certain things without an eye of judgment is probably very difficult for some people, and it might take a certain level of work, and a bit of a struggle maybe to find it, because when you talk about humanitarian aid and you're looking into something that is what you say is something very positive, there is the other side then, and there's the side which there's cynicism to it as well at times, and it doesn't matter what country we're talking about, where the aid is going, there seems to be cynicism, and you have to kind of finally balance yourself in between. It must be quite difficult.
I think it's a very difficult. We look at it now, like for me now also, this is a topic which is very important because of the war in Ukraine, and most of the refugees are ending up in Poland or going through Poland. And I admire people in Poland for being so charitable and helpful, and really excellent display of how you can be effective, how solidarity matters and is important, and networks. Of course, these are not just Polish people, so many, and most of them are migrants, Ukrainian migrants that had lived in Poland before the war started, and they are helping their kin and their friends. But so I admire this, and I'm extremely proud of my friends and colleagues who do that work. At the same time, I recognize that there can be actors, institutions for whom this might be an opportunity to claim some moral superiority vis-a-vis the West, which they accuse of not helping enough, or also claiming some superiority towards Ukraine, paradoxically, that, we are here to help, and then you have to show gratitude. And, there was a funny, not funny moment during Eurovision when Ukraine didn't vote for Poland, and it became, international relations matter, like, how dare you? But this is exactly, I think, I look at humanitarianism as an opportunity to create your own moral biography and decide who you are and present yourself either as an individual or as an organization or as a state to others, and create certain image of yourself. But yeah, I think you also asked about, what I do in anthropology, and this question of how not to judge. And this is something that I also try to do in my work on conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And you asked, a little bit about anthropology and my trajectory. And when I became a mom, and I had a circle of my friends who were also who I had known from my work in aid, we shared emails with friends, like moms do, about what to do, how to do things. And someone sent an article about vaccinations, and the article suggested, that they are not safe, or that they should be reconsidered, not mandatory, things like that. And we got into the email fight. And then I realized, why am I fighting about this with a good friend? I'm about to lose a friend. I don't tell her what to do when her child is sick and those kind of things. And I was like, why this issue was suddenly like, I became so, like ballistic about it. So if that was the reason why I also got, for instance, into the study of conspiracy theories. So I'm very selfish. I want to understand what concerns me.
No, that, like, I understand that, and I do want to talk about conspiracy theories as well. But there was one particular thing that was I found very interesting that you talked about. You talked about when Ireland repealed the Eighth, and the connection that you suggested that can have with the rest of the world. When the rest other countries see another country doing something that massive, because it was a very, very big thing in Ireland, as you know. And I think about, Roe v. Wade over in the US, and how much of I imagine people are fighting over that and falling out over that, those opinions. Do you think that something happening in somewhere like Ireland, which is a relatively small country, can affect other places or other, the mentality of other nations?
I think it can in a certain ways. It depends who and how.
Yeah.
I think I can speak, I'm not an expert on the States, but I know and I follow, and I'm personally concerned and can be affected by the trajectories of abortion laws in Poland. And I know that, for instance, in a country like Poland, which has always been, for those who don't know, Poland had laws, abortion laws, up until maybe a year ago, but I don't want to be wrong on that. The laws were quite simple. If there are unreversible defects to the fetus, there can be abortion up until 24th week.
Okay.
That included Down syndrome, and also if the pregnancy was a result of rape or it was risk to a mother's life, right? So there was a possibility of abortion in Poland for what we could maybe call medical reasons, right? Or the result of a crime. And it was performed. It was difficult already. Some doctors would refuse it. They would prolong the periods, to move beyond the 24th cutoff week, and then they would refuse. But it was possible. And now it was reversed. And in a country, so this is what's the situation. And now the story about Poland, as I said, and as people know, Poland was considered neither the East nor West, or has been or is still always behind the West, never keeping up. There is a story. It is this construct. It's a construct. It's not reality, but it's a construct which was a result of the racist colonial occupation of, colonialism done by Germany to Poland and Russia to Poland, and they created this narrative in the same way as UK created narrative about Ireland, right? About being backward, or the racist narratives about Irish people. So we see this today continue, that Polish people are second-class citizens in Europe. They are not fully civilized. They are lagging behind. They don't have proper democracy. There is always something.
Yeah.
And Poland is always trying to make up for the lost time, and it's always behind. That's the feeling. I'm not saying it's a reality, but it's a mutual feeling on both sides. It's extremely depressing, frustrating, deflating, but somehow, sometimes it can also be motivating. I think, and this is the difference, there can be different approaches to it, but I see sometimes in Poland how this feeling, people really struggle in so many creative and inspiring and fantastic ways to overcome this and to fight against those stereotypes and to overcome difficulties, to prove everyone around who would listen, no, we are good enough, and you have to take us into your own, exclusive clubs of the West, of the EU, of NATO, or whatever that is. So now, when the law was reversed, there is a lot of this civilizing discourse in Poland. We cannot be lagging behind. Let's look at Ireland. Let's see what they have done successfully, because Ireland is the latest one who made that change. And let's maybe sometimes mimic, copy, or use best examples. Maybe they will help us. Sometimes you can use those examples and they will be effective and they will work. Sometimes they will not. So for instance, I think now Irish in Her Shoes campaign gave more courage to Polish women to speak about their abortion experiences. So it doesn't mean everything will always, get attraction and resonate with, if you take Irish strategies and apply them to Poland, they might not work because of cultural reasons. But they can be inspirational, and definitely that was something that was discussed, and definitely that's something that when the law was about to be reversed, there was a lot of discussion about Irish history and how we cannot go there because it will, be very dangerous to women's lives.
Yeah, and I guess that works out in the opposite direction as well. If you look at a country who's, poor, handle their economy poorly, it's very easy to turn around and look at as that an example of what not to do in the situation that you might find yourself in. So I guess it works either way. Ella, just allow me to read out an advert, because I'm obliged to read this out. So to give 2 seconds.
Of course.
So I'll get it right. Fusion Training Centre, Monksland, Athlone, a place to train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts and CrossFit. A great atmosphere with experienced coaches and a real sense of community. If you want to join the team, find us on Facebook at Fusion Training Centre or drop in for a chat. Fusion Training Centre, train like a warrior. And done. So I wanted to talk about conspiracy theories because there's such a, they're there all the time, but there seems to be even more of an increase in interest in them. And more, I guess, the more interest there is in them, people come out with more interesting conspiracy theories, and we kind of goes on in a kind of a loop. But when you talked about like the vaccine, for instance, which was a very hot topic and kind of all consuming there for about 2 years, how difficult is it to talk and write about that? Because there is that sense of everybody's waiting to pounce at anything they disagree with.
Oh my God, that's a very good question, but it's actually very hard. Because for us as anthropologists, we try to build not always long-term and intimate relations, like intimate in terms of like close-knit relationship with our informants and partners in research, but we at least, we try to do our best to meet them in person, to get to know them better. I'm always very grateful when someone gives me their time. They get out of their way. Sometimes they travel for me. So I appreciate that, even if I don't agree with people. And I try to listen to their perspective. And so I need to be mindful and aware that someone trusted me when they shared their story, right? So when I write about them, I have to remember about that. But at the same time, I know there is the other side of people who are working. So this can be both. This relationship goes for whoever you talk to, whether these are doctors who are or epidemiologists who try to create safe environment in Ireland or in any other country for us all, or whether these are parents or individuals who are concerned about their own well-being and health and made vaccine decisions accordingly to their view, right? But when I write, I know both sides can read me, and it's very hard to write in a way that will make both sides engage, listen. And I know that I have been sometimes, I don't know if accused directly, but there were big concerns if I'm not going to the other side, definitely from the side of the doctors and epidemiologists, that I'm not too close to the, people that are called by others anti-vaxxers. But at the same time, I know that there are concerns for people who share their stories, who are concerned about vaccine safety, that who am I, whom I represent, who is paying for my research, who will use it, for whom do I work, and what will, this be used for, which are valid reasons. And in any field, whether you work in humanitarian aid or vaccine hesitancy, people have full right to have those questions, and you have to be mindful of them.
Do you then, when you're picking the things that you're to study or to write about, is it you that picks the topic? Are you given the topic to work on?
No, I choose the topic myself.
Okay.
So this is more or less, this is how most ideally, in the ideal world, this is how academia works. You get to the certain level of proficiency, expertise, and that grants you, after you get PhD, you should be granted this, it's like a certificate. You are now independent scholar who has who has all the skills to carry out research independently.
Yeah.
Right. So, and there is also something known as academic freedom, that no one should force us to do research on certain topics, or, that no one should tell us what we should, how, what are our findings. And so I choose every topic myself, definitely.
Yeah.
Sometimes you choose people to your lab or to your team, and then they somehow have to fit in. It depends on the discipline as well. But in anthropology, we are social anthropologists, but we are also very antisocial. So we like to work ours individually.
Well, I guess, the fact that you're picking your own topic, I mean, that's where the passion's going to come from. Sometimes it's very hard to be passionate about something that's been given to you, and it makes a lot of sense. Working in something like conspiracy theories must be pretty exciting, because of like what we discussed about them being, lots and lots of conspiracy theories, and if you keep digging, they keep digging. Anybody who disproves it or wants to disprove it keeps digging. I think there's certain ones though, and this isn't me trying to put people down or put you on the spot or anything like that, but there's certain ones that I find very, very difficult to imagine, because if someone said to me about the moon landing, for instance, that I know that's a very popular one, and about the flag, and they can point something in particular to say that this is why they don't believe it. The one that really stands out is the flat Earth one, because I don't know like, I know there's something a lot to do with psychology and in conspiracy theories, and I get that, but I can't quite get my head around that one. When is there do those kind of ones draw you in? And regardless of what you think about the flat earth theory, really, it's such an interesting topic and it's such an interesting subject. Would that be something that would draw you in just because it's so all over the place, really?
Is there a risk I will start believing?
No, not that there's a risk that you start believing, but the idea that, like, if you want to be balanced and fair about the things that you write about, when you write about conspiracy theory, for instance, flat earth, I'm trying to figure out how you could be balanced and fair about that.
Well, so there are different types of I'm very sorry, but someone is very loud in my family and I have to ask them to be quiet. So can we pause for 1 second?
I'll fill in the time and you can go.
Okay, and I will think about the answer as I come back.
Okay, right. Yeah, no problem. Just before we start recording is very interesting because Ella's kids are there, and my neighbor decided to start trimming a hedge out the back, and it was loud, so I had to shut all the windows. So it was like immediately as we came on to record, everything kicked off. But it's different. Look, it's different for me. I can like close the window, but obviously Ella's dealing with kids and trying to make sure that everything's good and quiet. But yeah, it gets me to have this little time alone. Oh, by the way, I went to the podcast during the week. Change is Key, it's called. So go and check that out if you haven't done so already. Ella is back. Everything okay?
Yes.
Okay.
It's summertime, so everyone is outside enjoying the weather.
Good.
So no one got killed in spite of the sounds. But okay, to answer your question about how to juggle this issue of how do we defend the truth, but at the same time give people empathy and space to understand them. There are, of course, different types of conspiracy theories. The flat earth conspiracy theories, we have evidence it's not flat. Like there is no discussing for me this. With vaccines, we have evidence they are safe, but we have also evidence that sometimes trials are not done in the correct way, but that's very minimal. It's historical mostly. Today that's not the case. But we also, so when we have those kind of conspiracy theories which concern what I would call science, we are very fortunate as social scientists to have colleagues in science, technology, engineering, medicine, who can help us understand, is this truth or not? If I'm in doubt, I can call my colleagues in the other department and ask, like, hey, I've heard this or that, right? We have experts. So then I think the conversation, you can always agree to disagree with your informants. I'm not the first person they're meeting who disagrees with them. But sometimes I might be the first person who disagrees with them and is willing to listen, right? And for me, always the question, what guides me is what is at stake. If at stake is our public health, if at stake is making sure that we want to live on the planet which will survive, when we talk about climate change, we have to not just find out who believes in conspiracy theories in terms of education, race, religion, gender, all those things, because okay, we will find out, but what do we do with this knowledge? If we find out that only left-handed people with brown eyes believe in conspiracy theories, what we will do with that? That's always my question. What do you do with that knowledge? What is it useful for, right? But if we want to understand why people believe in conspiracy theories and want to understand more of the background and what was the trajectory that led them to, no one is born anti-vaxxer. Most of people of our age were vaccinated, so something must have happened in their lifetime that made them change their mind. It's a very, Elisa Sobo writes about it as well. It's a dynamic process. Sometimes people vaccinate first child, then the second, then third not. So the question is what happens in between, right? So if we have shared goals we need to try to shape our research in a way that will help us to achieve that. So this is my guiding. The problems start when we have conspiracy theories which are difficult to discuss and navigate. Conspiracy theories concerning homophobia, conspiracy theories concerning gender, conspiracy theories which are regarding political events. Sometimes political scientists don't know what really happened, right? So, what really led to the breakdown of the Berlin Wall? How the war in Ukraine started? Everybody has theory, right? And so it's much, much harder to come from the position of certainty and truth. So it's a much harder discussion. But at the same time, I think that sometimes those conspiracy theories that concern social lives are much more, or like I don't want to, decide what is more or less important, what is more or less dangerous, but they are extremely dangerous. Conspiracy theories that are concerning LGBTQ, lobby, they impact people's lives in a way that, is so hurtful, so painful for the members of those communities. They destroy families. So it's much harder for me to have conversations with people who spread hatred in such an open way.
Yeah, I can get that. And my friend, when I was speaking to my friend the other day, I was telling them you were coming on, and I said we're going to discuss a bit about conspiracy theories, and there was something interesting that they kind of mentioned that they've noticed online or wherever, that someone who might believe in one of the bigger conspiracies, whether you want to judge them on scale or not, but they tend to have to believe in them all if they believe in one of the big ones. Almost like they have to fall in line, that they have to, if they believe in we're going to use the ones they use, so flat earth, they're going to believe in the moon landing was fake because the circular stuff and that, and then they're going to believe in this and this, and it's a quite a large scale operation. It becomes then almost as if they feel that if they didn't believe in one of the big ones, they weren't a true believer in conspiracy theories. Now, I don't know if that's almost going towards faith or like religion, and I don't know if it's quite that far, but it was an interesting point of view, really.
I think I do think it's an interesting observation, because also, why do we concern those unorthodox, unaccepted views, theories? Because when we speak about them as theory, that points more to this idea that they are somehow false science, that they are somehow in opposition to science. And because it's scientists who define this phenomenon as conspiracy theories, so we as scientists, we dedicated our professions and our lives to defending the truth and science and finding out the truth. So when we see someone saying silly things or questioning what is already an established knowledge, scientific knowledge, we take it personally, and then this became like conspiracy theory discourse to point to the fact that maybe those, and this is what Hofstadter was pointing at, that these are not rational people. These are, people who are not educated, maybe, or things like that, right? But what if we consider it actually not conspiracy theory, but beliefs, right? And then we can go back, and that can open a new understanding of that phenomena. So as I said, not everybody's born, or anybody's born anti-vaxxer, but you make this choice at some point. And I think people do recognize that they making a bold move, which goes against the norm, which is a strong move against certain values, social values, about that we have to protect one another, not just from the military threats, but also from diseases, right? So it's a strong statement for someone to take. And if you cross those norms, you do something outside of the norms, and you join the new way of thinking, you change, I don't know if your values, but perception of the world, I think you have to reaffirm yourself in it.
Yeah.
I think once you cross the fence, it's like the religiosity of the newly of the neophyte, the person who joins the religion, right? You have to be more holy than Pope in a way.
Yeah.
So you have to constantly confirm to yourself that your stand is right. So
Yeah.
you look for people who are like you. It will be a community experience, and you will be very strongly not just convinced, but making all, that's why we see those people. You might be concerned that there are more conspiracy theories, but very often these are people who not so, for whom conspiracy theories became a new topic, and they want to confirm to themselves, I'm right. So they also preach to others.
Yeah.
Because through the act of preaching, they convince themselves that they are right. They haven't made a bad choice, but they are on the right side of the history. And they also want to convert others because that will help them to confirm that what they believe is right. So that's why they will be very active in sharing what they are passionate about, whichever theory that is.
Yeah, like I didn't think of it in that way actually, and that makes a lot of sense with the sharing of it. Online is such an easy format for people to go on to and just share their thoughts on that. And it is one of those things that happens a lot. And the idea of, obviously we want it to be accepted by our group, and whether I'm a sheep or whatever it might be that have been called before, it's okay. But I wanted to ask, actually, working in anthropology, because you've worked in different countries as well. Is it quite easy to see the difference in cultures? Even if we're talking about Europe, for instance, say of Poland and Ireland, is it quite easy to see those different cultures, or do you have to dig under the surface a little bit?
In terms of conspiracy theories?
Not even conspiracy theories, just like the cultural differences between the people.
I think for anyone who travels, you don't have to be anthropologist to recognize that we are different. For me, it is, this fascinates me, so I see it everywhere. And so I might be biased, but in terms of conspiracy theories, I think to give you an example, I don't think Irish I don't want to say what Irish culture is because people will eat me alive.
You're Irish now. You can say it. You can say it.
No, I'm Irish. So, but I think there is, some people would say in Ireland there's less space for extremism, right? We are kind, and I remember when I moved to Ireland, someone told me, "Oh, Ella, you're so outspoken." And I felt like my reaction was like, "Thank you." I thought it's a compliment.
Yeah.
And then I realized, no, not here. So
It's true.
I had to really tone down. I don't think I was ever successful in toning myself down. But you see, when you are in this kind of environment, coming up with extreme is not really a good idea. So that's why people might be more secretive about conspiracy theories. They might be speaking more in between lines, in indirect speech. They will nod a lot. Those interviews are horrible because people just like,
Yeah.
And like, I cannot. While in other spaces, in other locations, communities, for instance, in Poland, there is a saying that where there are two poles, there are three opinions. So people love discuss politics, and everybody has opinions, and it's in a good, it's accepted to have those kind of conversations. So that's why people might be more outspoken.
Yeah.
At the same time, when it comes to conspiracy theories, and this might be what is similar to both Poland and Ireland, is that we went in both spaces for so much, and we had other countries and our own governments to conspire against us. So sometimes things are just theories, not necessarily conspiracy theories, because, well, who knows, right? While for other nations in Europe, this might be considered, hey, it's a stretch. Why are you so suspicious? So I think also this spectrum of what is acceptable critique and what falls into the conspiracy theories, spectrum is different for different communities. For me, it was very interesting to be involved and be a witness of repeal in Ireland. I found it when it comes to you ask about differences. I found it very interesting moment when I was at one of those Facebook groups where people found a safe space to talk about where they stand, what they feel, what they went through. And there was Parents for Choice group where sometimes people would support each other in finding strategies to talk to their, seniors in their families, grandmas, grandpas, aunties. And people would, I remember someone said, help me find strategy, like, I don't remember how they put it, but they said something like, okay, I have to find a way to convince my grandmother because for sure she's no vote, right, against the repeal. And then everybody was supportive and how to, approach the granny, the nana. And then the person comes back and they're like, Rona said she's yes. And that person was so shocked. And I thought, like, how you might not know what you be so wrong about such a close person to you. Yeah. And how we like to speak of Ireland as, this community, the land of community where everybody's close-knit and everybody is together. And somehow we don't know where people stand on basic issues.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. It's interesting, but I wanted to say that as well because Poland and Ireland would be quite religious countries, or they were, and whether they still are, I'm not too sure, or what way they're moving towards. I found it interesting when we were asked to vote on abortion rights and then on the gay marriage referendum. I found it very interesting about the idea that you mentioned it there about older people. And we immediately thought, well, all the older people are going to vote no for gay marriage and are going to vote no for abortion. So there was no discussion even. And it's interesting the way you put it. You put it differently, at the idea that we don't even know the person, that we're so close to someone, we don't know what way they'd vote in a certain thing. And it always interested me in the idea that we wouldn't just have a conversation with our grandparents or even our parents. It doesn't really have to be grandparents, but I don't know if that runs in the fact, or if that's in my mind, the fact of religion and the fact that there was always the idea that, being gay was wrong. And so automatically, even still, that older people would still vote against gay marriage. And it turned out like that it wasn't the case at all, that it wasn't. I just find it fascinating. And now that you've brought it up, whether I had been thinking about it back then or not, I'm not even too sure. But the idea of not having conversations, and that may go back to the Irishness, or that may go back to the our past, history of religion and stuff like that. And I suppose when I think about Poland and Ireland and the Polish people coming over to Ireland and fitting in so well, whether there's so many similarities between that, it's hard to see the difference sometimes.
Yes. So I think it's, I don't know, I always see the difference, but
yeah, well, that's fair.
I am biased. Like, I think I already have my anthropological glasses on, and it's hard to take them off. But I think, I think at the same time we are similar. There is a fly running around, flying.
Guest appearance.
But there is like, we are similar. We might share, majority of people in Poland and Ireland might share religion, Catholicism, but our variants of Catholicism might be very different, right? And how we, I think, for instance, I would read a lot about shame and about guilt, Catholic guilt. And I think this one would be, differently exhibit in Poland. I think also Irish history of Catholicism is also very different because Poland went through communism, and there was, there was big period of time when religion was completely expelled, and got a different. Definitely, we there was no religion at schools or anything like that. So at the same time, so I think it's similar, but it's different.
Yeah.
Right. So so I think for me as anthropologist, the question is always about nuance and details, and how even history or structural organization, the politics of a certain country, how they influence who we are and how we act, how we create our lives.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, and like what I loved about, I guess I was in my maybe my early 20s when Polish people started coming to Ireland in numbers, and it's funny that you mentioned about like there's the Irish maybe a little bit more reserved, maybe that might be the best way of putting it, but there was a real friendliness from the Polish people when they came in, and it was almost like freaked me out a little bit at the start because when you're not used to something and it's like it's all of a sudden it's kind of there, but it's all like it can't help but affect the Irish people, when a large group of people come from a nation, you're going to take certain things away from those people, and bring them into your own life, and it's only for the benefit, and it's just coincidental that where you're from, it happens to be Poland, and Poland were the first kind of where there was a large number of people came in. I just thought it was like it was relatively seamless in the fact. Now I don't know if you see the same way as me. Now you have different opinions and you will have different experiences, but from my point of view, when I saw Polish people coming into the country, I thought it was a very positive thing and a really good, a force of good almost. But you may answer that differently than me.
I think, I know for myself, I moved to Ireland from UK, and I definitely felt more welcomed in Ireland. I think that was also a reason because UK is much more divided by class. And I not only didn't fit, Brexit happened for the reason, and I not only was of a wrong nationality in UK, but I was also considered to be of a wrong class. And it was only after I would, throw people in their face my Cambridge credentials, they would be like, oh, okay. But I had to learn, it was like for me, coming from Poland, I think this is what's similar also maybe to Ireland. I would never, it would be extremely rude and like, why would I throw my degree or, that kind of background in a conversation? In UK, this is how I would make sure that the doctor will treat me with respect, that I'm not a cleaner here, that I'm, getting PhD at Cambridge. Oh, okay. But then I thought this will work also in Ireland, and it didn't go well at all.
Right.
People thought I have notions and I'm someone really. So I also had to unlearn this kind of way of, because every place is different, people are different. So I think it was, it's nice to hear that you feel that Polish people were welcomed. I think there is something that when you have people coming into the country, both sides have to be interested in making connection, and you cannot always put it on the incoming society, because if the welcoming society doesn't want to welcome anyone or makes no effort, then it's much harder, and you cannot really do much if there is no space for welcoming. I think what makes harder for longer process of integration for any migrant in Ireland is that Irish people are very family orientated, and everybody, if you grew up with someone in one village, yourself, like you will make connection with people quickly. Regardless where you are, do you know this one, where you're from, who you are, like you immediately find someone who you know from your past, and that connects you and you click. If you're a migrant, you don't have that. I don't have someone with whom I went to school in Ireland, it's harder to make that click. And then to be, it's your ticket in, a ticket into a home, a ticket into an event, or, So I think once people start having, now I think it will be more and more because Polish kids and other migrants go to Irish schools. So I think I would hope it will even help even more with integration.
And like it's funny, the Polish kids and the Czech kids or wherever they're from in Europe and in Ireland now, not only speaking Polish and English and then learning Irish and probably speaking Irish better than me. I think that's fascinating. Like, and we mentioned
Polish is now second spoken language in Ireland.
Is it?
There are more Polish speakers in Ireland than Irish.
That makes sense. But like you said before we start recording, the Irish language is very, very difficult language to kind of, there's no connection. And when we were joking about me trying to pronounce your surname, like the Polish language, when I first saw it, obviously I wouldn't have seen it until, the Polish people were here and they may have had like a book on the table or something. I had no starting point for the way the letters were put together. And it's, apart from maybe a football team or, a football player or something might, have it. And I find that kind of fascinating that the Irish language, it would be great if it was brought back to life and, but it's hard to see because of, I'm always going, I'd love to learn it. Why don't they just learn it? I don't know. It's just too much hard work maybe, but, listen, I wanted to ask as well, because I think it's important we talk about a lot of like, heavy stuff on that. Not that was that heavy, but what do you like to do in your spare time? I know you have kids and that as well, but do you get any spare time?
That's a good question. I don't have spare time.
Okay, let's imagine a scenario. Okay, we're going to do this because sometimes we need to do this. If you did have spare time, what would you do with it?
So I will tell you what I do. What is my strategy to make a spare time?
Okay.
I work super hard during the academic year, during school year, and then I relocate to the countryside. I'm very fortunate and I'm very privileged. This is where I am now, and that's why it's so noisy, because there are like children and friends coming over. So for me as a migrant, it's very important to go back, make time to be with my family, with my mom, for my children to understand where I am from. I'm not saying they are from here, I am from here. But I do think it's important for kids, for humans, to understand their roots. You asked about mental health, and I know I talked at some point with people who, I had a research project on experts, on people, professionals who moved a lot in their lives. And now they're looking back and, the life of their children, how they thought it would be super beneficial, that will make a lot of money, but now their kids are like somehow in between. They don't know who they are, have difficulty making relationships. And they as parents think this is because of them and their lifestyle. But anyways, so I think it's always important to have your strong roots. So I make sure that I come here and then I just enjoy swimming. It is fun. This is the difference, cultural difference. But maybe not between Irish and Polish, but between British and Polish, what they called wild swimming. I'm like, why do you call it wild swimming? It's just swimming.
Yeah.
Like everybody around the world does it. They just jump into the lakes, rivers, and oceans and they swim. No one calls it wild swimming. You don't have to make a thing out of it. But
you're right, though. I agree. 100% agree. And you're like, some Irish call it that. I don't think it's widely used, but I've definitely heard it more as a UK thing, as a wild swimming.
It sounds like some sort of posh way of rebranding something that is so mundane and normal, and it's hot. You jump into the whatever water you have in front of you.
Yeah, and it also, to me, it sounds like a bad swimming stroke. Like you've got like, you know what I mean? Like you're just wildly thrashing around the water. You're just not.
Maybe a wild bird, chasing you. But I haven't thought about it, but you're right. But so this is what I do. It's important for me to be here in this place that I love, with nature. And, like we spoke about Polish people coming to Ireland, but I would encourage every Irish person to come to Poland. It's beautiful. Don't go just to Kraków and on Święcim. There is more to in Auschwitz, as you call it. There's more to Poland, and it's such a beautiful place, and you can really appreciate it. So I like doing that, meeting friends, and I think when I don't have time in Poland or in Ireland or Slovakia, where I live now as well, I like sewing and making clothes for children.
Oh, that's productive. That's nice.
Not too much, but it gives me like pleasure and satisfaction.
I can imagine there's a kind of I talked to someone about this before, but the kind of the peacefulness that you get from doing something like that. It's not your mindfulness and is a good way of putting it, but it's the idea of being able to do something without much thought. So when you're sitting there doing that kind of thing, there's a certain amount of calm and still, and everybody needs that anyway.
For me, I discovered sewing. I did it when I was young, and then I got frustrated because I was not good at it. My mom was obviously much better, and I was not a patient learner, and I was just a rebel teenager. I couldn't stand instructions, but my mom was good enough to give me good instructions so that when I grew into loving it later, when I had a first child, I needed some sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
Something that would be like, I did something, yeah, something that would give me joy and some quick, satisfaction.
Yeah.
And sewing was good because you can do it for 5, 10, 20 minutes. And then when child wakes up, you put it on a side, you come back to it. And after, you accumulate a certain hours of working on the project, I felt very accomplished and proud, and and also child couldn't speak yet, so she would not judge whether it is ugly or pretty.
Yeah. Perfect.
So it was nice, and I continue doing that. So I try to learn sometimes new techniques. So.
Nice. Just before you go, do you know your next project in advance? Have you figured that out yet, or?
So I continue working now on conspiracy theories, right? And I'm trying to understand conflicts over conspiracy theories.
Oh, okay.
So this is not only why people believe and endorse and engage with conspiracy theories, but also why people engage with conspiracy theories by debunking them. Why is it so triggering for others, and why people engage in debunking or create even NGOs or policies or educational campaigns. So for me, it is, what are those conflicts really about? Are they about whether the flat is Earth, or are those conflicts about something bigger, some bigger questions in societies? So
I look forward to reading them. Can you stay with me for 1 minute? I'm just going to finish off. I'll take one photograph for the social media stuff, and then we'll be gone. Is that all right? Thank you very much, Ella. You were absolutely brilliant for coming on today. I also want to thank John for doing the tech stuff for me. The usual, my mom, my dad, my granddad, Jaron Calvin. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. It's very helpful. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Spotify, Apple, Anchor, Google Podcasts, etc. Yeah, I know, every time. But I've got OCD, so it has to be done every time. It has to be done that way every time. But thanks to everyone for tuning in. Ella, thanks for your time in particular. It was a fascinating conversation, and I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much. I really enjoy it as well. So, and if I may, I would like to also encourage whoever is listening to it, not just to think about conspiracy theories today, but also about Ukraine. And I think I understand people are experiencing Ukraine fatigue, but I think Ukraine really needs us still. So
absolutely,
let's not forget about them as well.
Yeah, and absolutely a good point to put across. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot. We'll see you next week, as the title of the podcast suggests. Have a lovely evening. Take care.
Thank
Bye now.